Hey everyone, we are back and we are talking about infusing humor into your writing. It's always good to have a good sense of humor. I'm Melody Ann, your host. Have you heard of community-based publishing? If you have an idea and you want to turn that idea into a nonfiction book, you are in the right place. We help you by creating a roadmap and then come into the community where you execute the plan. You go from idea to finished book and you become a successful nonfiction author. To get started, download the planning checklist at authornation.online/planning. Now, our guest, Neil Berliner, is an American comedy writer, stand-up comedian, comedy producer, and comedy instructor. He began his professional career with the Howard Stern Show in 1999, a show I clearly remember. Today, Neil is one of the most requested joke instructors in the United States. He delivered his seminar, Anatomy of a One-Liner, at the World Series of Comedy main event on two occasions, as well as at the People's Improv Theater in Manhattan from 2014 to 2017. He's personally instructed hundreds of comedians at all levels. In early 2022, Neil was named the first comedy writer in residence for the Comedy Cures Foundation, a charity organization that has done events for patients and caregivers on 4 continents over the past 20 years. It is supported by the Jerry Seinfeld Foundation, as well as by many of the other top names in comedy. Neil is also a practicing medical doctor and the medical director of a large mental health agency in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. Let's welcome Neil. Hi, Neil. How are you today?
Hi, Melanie. Oh, you caught me grabbing my drink. Okay.
That's okay. No worries. So let's go back to, how did you become a medical doctor and a comedian?
Well, I think there were separate tracks, actually.
Mm-hmm.
I was on track from a young age to become a doctor. I was interested in science, and I grew up in a lower middle class environment in Brooklyn, and my parents were kind of pushy to get me to do something that would make some money. So it wasn't a bad situation. Wound up well. But I always knew that I had interest in comedy, and I would wind up in comedy on some kind of level. And after med school, things started working out professionally in that way. And actually, medicine gave me freedom to do comedy because a lot of comedians are basically broke and it restricts them in a lot of ways. Like you can't travel if you don't have any money. And, you just having more resource, just being more comfortable economically makes you able to breathe a little easier and it could help creativity,
Yeah.
That combination of factors helped me in both careers, actually.
Yeah. Well, I think that's really impressive. And I have to say, Lisa Ann thinks so too. She says, wow, Dr. Neil, that's great. So she's also impressed. Lisa Ann, thank you for joining us today. So which one is more difficult?
Well, to be super successful, it's more difficult in comedy. To be successful, if you go to med school and you do well, you can become a doctor. The track for medicine is pretty predetermined. If you get into medical school and don't flunk out, you will become a doctor. In comedy, you don't know what's going to happen to you. You don't know if anything's going to happen to you. So difficult. I find joke writing very easy. It just comes naturally to me. So for some people, and people I deal with in comedy, Seinfeld actually calls it the DNA of comedy. Like you either have the DNA or you don't. That doesn't mean that people who don't have the DNA can't be taught to write jokes or to be funnier. But, in the field, you either sort of have the ability to see situations and what's funny about them or to make something funny out of it, or you don't.
Yeah.
So I guess what's easier for me, comedy is easier for me. Yes.
Okay, brilliant. Because I think comedy would be, I think comedy for me would be the more challenging one because, as you say, the medical career is just, this is what you do. This is the path. Whereas comedy, there's no path, and you're just, trying to figure out where it fits. What type of medicine do you practice?
I practice psychiatry, adult psychiatry.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so do you bring humor into your workplace? Like, is it, treating a patient with mental health issues, is there, what place does comedy have in that?
Well, I think in psychiatry, you need to, just as in comedy, there's sort of an intersection. So to do well in either field, you have to be able to show people a new way of thinking about something. So, for instance, in psychiatry, you need to be able to convince a patient to take a certain medicine that you think will help the person. Or you might try to show them something in psychotherapy, a new path to lead them to a new way of thinking about something. So, and the same thing's true in comedy. You basically, in stand-up comedy, you're showing people a new angle on something that they already have seen. You know,
Yeah.
some life situation that you see in a different way, and when you present it in a different way, that's usually translated as funny, or very often translated by people as funny. When you point
Yeah.
something out new to them about a mundane situation, let's say.
I've never thought about it that way. So I really like that. I think it's
Yeah, well,
brilliant.
I've spent a lot of time thinking about it because I've been asked many times, being a psychiatrist and a comedian, I've been asked many times, what the connection is. And it's taken me a long time to just come to a concise, simple answer about it. But I think that really kind of, for me anyway, answers the question.
Yeah. I also think that partly answers the question, why is humor so important? Why is comedy so important?
Well, we live in a very troubled world and we all have stress and all kinds of issues and we need relief, from that stress. And laughing causes chemical changes in the body that are good. We get surges of chemicals and neurotransmitters, things like dopamine and serotonin, which make you feel better and less depressed. So, for whatever reason, jokes seem to trigger these neurotransmitters. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And so you've brought comedy also to publishing. You wrote a book called Ha Ha History, which I have to say, every time I see the title, I want to go, ha ha.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ha ha
What's so
history.
funny about history, right? In the first place.
Right.
Well,
Joke's on
okay.
us.
Well, as a kid, I always hated history, actually. It's funny
Oh.
that I'm involved with a book. I actually co-wrote this with three other people. I'll tell you about them. And now we
Mhm.
have a fourth person on the team, a fifth person on the team who's very good for the team. But, how did this come about? A friend of mine, a comedian and entertainment lawyer in New York, Joey Novick is his name. He had been writing some jokes on Facebook about things that happened in history. Like on February 3rd, this year, he would write something that happened on February 3rd, 1721, and then make some kind of joke about it. So he compiled some of those. Then he called me and said, "Look, why don't we put together a book of history jokes? We can go back into history from the beginning of recorded time and make jokes about them." And I said, "Well, we should do them with a modern twist. So it could be like a joke about, let's say, I don't know, Christopher Columbus, would have discovered America, 2 weeks earlier, but he left his cell phone at home or something and couldn't navigate or whatever, something like that. So,
Yeah.
so we decided that we would do modern twists on historical events. And I knew that it was a big project too, because we wanted to do January 1st to December 31st. So that's 366 days in the year if you include February 29th. So
Yes.
I brought in two top people. I'm very lucky that I have access to A-level talent in comedy. And I contacted my friend Mike Morse from the Howard Stern Show. We had done stuff together at the Howard Stern Show and Mad Magazine. Mike's written for the Tonight Show, so he's done it all. And he's actually a great illustrator as well, fantastic illustrator. So I called him. He wanted to get involved. And I have another friend, Ron Bo Phillips, who is a California comedian. And Ron, I compare to Kramer from Seinfeld, except he's much wilder. He out Kramers Kramer. This guy he gets into situations with strippers and the police and alcohol, wild stuff. Fantastic joke writer. And so we all had a different role in this book.
Mhm.
Joey was the entertainment lawyer, and Mike is an illustrator, and Ron is a tech guy. He's actually worked for NASA, and So he did all our tech stuff. Actually, my son, one of my sons did some tech stuff for as well. He did some editing, but and I'm a good uh, joke writer, and I can edit jokes very well. I know how to chop jokes down, punch them up to make them more concise. I know how to eliminate the wrong words from a joke. So I became the editor of the book because for each date of the year, January to December, we each submitted several jokes for consideration. So my job was to edit and find the best joke or what I thought was the best joke for each date. So I did that, and I chose the jokes that we would use for illustrations as well. So it was a very good team. It was a very fun project. I mean, I'm looking back on it now. Um, all we did was crack jokes all day. We had these meetings. The Zoom meetings would be just us, like meeting, a writer's room meeting at a late night, monologue meeting for a talk show. So it was a lot of fun. And we've recently brought on an excellent, fantastic comedian impressionist. His name is Jason Scoop. Now, if you know Saturday Night Live, Dana Carvey was a very big guy on Saturday Night Live, an impressionist. And he recently had a TV show. I think he's Canadian too, actually, Dana Carvey. And he recently had a TV show called First Impressions. And our new team member, Jason Scoop, won that TV show for impressionist. He's amazing. He can do any celebrity you can mention. And every day now on TikTok, we have Jason doing a joke from the book in a different celebrity impersonation. So it's just a great team. It's a lot of fun. Great project. And we're working on the sequel now. So I'm starting to edit the sequel.
That sounds like a lot of fun. So you had more than one joke per day.
Yes.
Right? So you had to narrow it down. So are you writing more jokes for the sequel, or are you kind of looking at
Well,
what you already had?
well, I'm looking over what we have. We have 5 or 6 jokes for each date, and 2 or 3 of them are usable, in my opinion, for most dates. But there's going to be dates where I'm not happy with the joke. And already yesterday, I texted the guys and said, I need jokes for 6 or 7 dates. In the middle of the night, Mike Morse got back to me with killer jokes for all the dates. So it's just a pleasure to work with these guys.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, that's amazing. I could not write you a joke at 2 a.m. I could not
Well,
write
you
you a
see,
joke.
I work fantastically at night when nobody's, when it's quiet. I can go
Right.
into my office at 3 a.m. and pump out jokes.
Okay.
It's kind of
Yeah.
the best time for me, actually.
Oh, that's funny. 'Cause I have trouble telling a joke to begin with, let alone, at 2 a.m. And so,
Well,
I think
I'll tell you, Molly, it's a lot different telling a joke and writing a joke because I don't
yes.
consider myself a great joke teller. I sort of stumble over jokes sometimes. I have done stand up, but my strength is as a comedy writer. I can write well, but I don't see myself as, a classic kind of stand
Right.
up, a good stand up comedian. But telling and writing are really 2 different things.
Yeah. I mean, because there's difference between writing it and delivering it, right? There's
That's
something,
what I mean. That's what I
yeah,
mean.
some comedians are funny, mostly because just how they deliver it. They know
Right.
exactly when to pause,
Yeah.
right?
Acting and diction and accents and all those kind of things are crucial to being a good stand-up comedian.
Yeah,
And the good
exactly.
stand-up comedians are the ones that wind up on sitcoms, the ones who get sitcoms.
Yeah.
So they're naturals for sitcoms because good stand-up encompasses fantastic acting
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and pausing, like you said, and all those kind of things. You have to know
Yeah.
what the timing is essential to a
Timing
joke.
is everything. I have
Yeah.
the worst timing, so I can't tell jokes. But um, so your second book. So it's again, it's going to be history, January 1st to December 31st, a joke for every day.
Yeah, I was thinking of calling it volume 2. We're going to have different kinds of sequels, actually. We have
Hmm.
different, we considered Haha History to be like a franchise. So we're going
Okay.
to be do different categories of books. The first sequel will be just a straight sequel. I think I'd like to call it Haha History Volume 2 because the authors need to still pay their rents, something like
Yeah.
that.
Yes. Yeah. And so this is going to be a franchise, though. So you're going to have different topics.
Yes, I can't divulge the topics. They're going to be
Totally
different
get that.
categories of, it'll be Haha History slash some topic.
Yeah. Okay.
And so
Brilliant.
all that's being worked on.
Is there anything behind it other than this is an entertaining book. This is a lot of fun. You're obviously not hoping teachers use it to teach history, but is there
Yes.
something beyond just being funny and having fun? Is there another piece to this?
Well, what you just said is exactly what the other angle to this book has become. I've already
Mhm.
heard from history teachers saying that this is a great way to teach history. And as I said, when I was a kid, I really didn't like history. I was a science math guy,
Yeah.
and I didn't like history because I found it boring just to memorize dates and wars and generals. I could never keep them straight. But with this, I read a joke about a war or a general, and there's a joke attached to it, and then I remember what it is. So I've had history teachers come to me and say, "Look, we can utilize this as some kind of educational tool." So I think one sequel we will do, I think, will be "Haha History Kids."
Ah,
So to put the jokes, in other words, keep. Well, we don't have any really bad language in the joke, but there's some sexual innuendo in the book. But in a Ha History Kid, we obviously wouldn't do that. But I think we can make it kid appropriate, child appropriate for certain ages to be able to utilize it as a tool to teach history. And if
yeah.
anybody wants to get involved with that, give me a call. We'll work with
Yeah, no, I think partnering with a couple of teachers might be a great idea on that. They'll know
it. Yeah,
exactly, what's in the grade 6 curriculum, right? And how do you make jokes around that? That could just get more and more expansive, really.
right. And we can even go into Ha History, science specific. Radium was, discovered. X-rays were discovered in this year. Scientific discoveries make them funny, and
Yeah.
teach science in that way as well.
Yeah. It's amazing how you write one book and then all of a sudden it's like, well, wait a minute. There's so much potential here. There's so much more you can do with it. Uh, I I think that's a really good way for authors to look at their publishing, right?
Well,
What
I was
else
going to
can you
ask you,
do?
do you deal with so many authors? Is that common to happen?
Well, it's something I definitely encourage,
Uh-huh.
right? You don't, if you just write one book and then that's all you do, you want to write one book, you want to promote the one book, but you also want to either have something behind it business wise, right? Coaching
Right.
courses or something, or you want to have a series of books. Not a lot of authors make a lot of money off of just one book. There has to be some kind of business, whether it's like an author business, a book-based business, or whether it's another business with a book.
Well, that's what I told 40 years ago. I told that to James Patterson. He told me, Neil, I'm through. I'm done. I did my book. I said, James, I think there's another book or two in you. And, here we are.
Yeah, exactly. It was good advice you gave him. Can you
Yeah,
share a couple of jokes from the book?
sure. Let's see. Okay. April 19th, 1971, Charles Manson is sentenced to life in prison. The sentence is literally the only thing Manson isn't crazy about. Here's another one. June 7th. This one has an illustration. Let me find that. June 7th, 1993. Rock icon Prince celebrates his birthday by changing his name to an unpronounceable symbol. Ironically, the symbol is always drawn correctly on his Starbucks cup. Mhm.
Yes, I love that.
Oh, here's the cover, by the way.
Oh, that's brilliant. I love
Available on
it.
Amazon and Kindle.
Yeah, that's a
Okay.
lot of fun.
All right. How
That's
about this? August 17th, 1953. First meeting of Narcotics Anonymous in Southern California. Widely hailed as a breakthrough in giving dealers a way to find their customers. Actually, find new customers.
find new customers.
Right.
Exactly. Brilliant.
All right, I'll
Brilliant. Thank
skip it.
you.
I'll skip a slightly dirty one because this is a clean show. Okay.
Uh,
February 23rd, 1988. Now, this one is on TikTok today because today's February 20. Actually, today's February 23rd, right?
it
Yeah.
is.
Okay. February 23rd, 1988. Lights are installed in Wrigley Field, enabling the Chicago Cubs to play night games. After finishing the season 24 games out of first place, that's bad. Okay. The entire Cub roster becomes terrified as their maniacal fans can now identify the players by their faces. Okay. All
Nice.
right, I'll give you one more. April
Yep.
1st. We got time?
Yeah, yeah.
1889. The first dishwashing machine is marketed. Millions of husbands say, I already have a dishwashing machine. Her. That night throughout the US, adult male visits to emergency rooms increased by 45%. And here's the graphic for that. Here's the illustration.
Yeah, other way. Yeah, brilliant. Yes, exactly.
So it shows you how, I mean, the illustrations by these guys. Oh, as a matter of fact, funny story about the illustrations. Mike Morse got so busy with a Howard Stern related podcast recently. I'll plug it. It's called the Uncle Rico Show. He got so busy he couldn't do some of the illustrations. So we found a guy in South Africa, okay, who did them remotely, and the style is essentially the same as Mike Morse, and his name is also Mike. His name is Mike
Oh,
Krebs.
that's funny.
So many things came together very well for this book,
Yeah,
like real
that's
synergy, real
that's
kiss.
brilliant. That's
Yeah.
brilliant. All right. If you're out there wanting to know more about Neil, you can find more about him at neilberlinercomedy.com. That is not his medical URL. That is his comedy URL, neilberlinercomedy.com. I'd love to talk about humor and why it's important just to our lives, but also important in nonfiction books. A lot of authors think, I'm writing a book, I'm just going to dump information. But that's not enough. So let's talk a little bit about why humor's, and we've talked about it a little bit. Life's rough, man, and things aren't going well all the time, and so humor kind of gives us those endorphins. How can we use that to the benefit of readers and also making our book more readable?
Well, books, fiction, um, should be realistic. So no situation in life is completely serious or completely funny. So I think to interject humor, I mean, now we have dramedies. We have these drama comedies, right, on
Yeah,
TV. So it's sort of part of life to include humor. I think it's unnatural to not include humor in even a serious kind of fiction book,
yeah,
because
yeah,
what life or what situation is devoid of humor completely? I don't think any is.
yeah,
The issue is
yeah,
how to get it. The issue is that maybe writers don't know very well how to put the humor into the book, into
yeah.
their story.
Well, I think part of it for nonfiction specifically, uh, writers they have this idea. It's like I have to get information out, and they
Oh,
forget
for
about
nonfiction, you're talking
yeah
about
for nonfiction.
nonfiction.
They forget that there's more to life than just downloading information into somebody's brain. There's a whole bunch of other stuff that we need to do, including humor, right? Especially, and here's the thing: some nonfiction authors, like I'm writing a very serious book. Humor doesn't have its place, and I'd like to ask you that. So as a psychiatrist, you deal with very serious things. Does that mean there's no place for humor and humor's not useful, or it's it becomes the inappropriate thing to do?
Well, let me answer the question this way. If you think of your favorite teachers in high school, or even junior high school before that,
Hmm.
most people will say, "Oh, this teacher made it so interesting or funny. That's why I like the class."
Hmm.
That's what defines a good teacher to many students.
Hmm.
They look back at their school days and think of the teacher they remember the most was the one who made things funny or different or interesting in some way. So just because you're dealing with hard data doesn't mean it can't be funny. And I'll give you an interesting story from my life. Before I got into stand-up comedy professionally, I was a speaker for pharmaceutical companies as a doctor. So I became a top national speaker for drug companies, and I spoke on a couple of medicines that I thought were the better, antidepressants, antipsychotics, and I became a very popular speaker, not because I was the best academic doctor. Like there were other guys and women who they had unbelievable academic credentials and research credentials, but I was booked more to do talks because I was I made the talks interesting and funny. And that's what the drug reps wanted. They just wanted a nice dinner talk to talk a little bit about the hard data, but to
Yeah.
make it memorable and interesting to the guests.
Right.
So that's my example of utilizing humor in with a serious topic, and
Yeah.
worked
And
for me. So
yeah, that makes
I think it can work for anybody trying to present all kinds of technical data.
yeah. Yeah, that makes sense because, if you're at a conference, for example, you don't want people, falling asleep in their food or being
Exactly.
so desperately bored that they've gone for their sixth drink, right? So, it's
Exactly.
like I need to find entertainment somewhere.
And I
Yeah.
noticed it's funny because you mentioned that. It reminded me of something. Before I did my first pharmaceutical talk, I went to one at a restaurant to see what it's like, just to check out what's going on. And the speaker was so boring, and he went on for over an hour and a half. He wouldn't let anybody eat dinner until he got through this talk. So that was another tip I learned: let the people eat. They're more concerned with the dinner than your talk. Okay, so you know you have to make it palatable to people.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what I learned.
Yeah. And so as you've said earlier, there is an idea that funny might be in our DNA, but if we don't feel it that it's in our DNA, or we feel that somehow we've lost it along the way because life is too serious, how do we get our funny back?
Well, there's various tricks that I can teach people to
Hmm.
be funnier. You know, I mean, I can't make everybody into Dave Chappelle, but there's only one Dave Chappelle anyway. So
Yeah.
um, there's things you can do. Like in my joke writing course, what I'll do is I'll say you need a premise of some kind. So an author could say the premise is, the person went to Chicago, whatever. You have to have some kind of premise based in reality. Okay. And then you want to make some kind of funny connection to something else. So if you're talking about, you know, a 40-year-old woman taking a train to Chicago, what I would suggest, and you want to do something funny with that, let's say. And I'm just making this up right now. I don't know
Hmm.
if I can even come up with something funny about this, but here's how I would do. I'm just giving you like a like a blueprint kind of, okay. What I would do is take three columns and say 40-year-old woman, train, Chicago. And then write all the key connecting words to all these three topics. Train. It could be, you know, lower class than flying first class on an airline, or it could be, all keywords: locomotive, steam engine, dining car, anything you can think about for a train, Amtrak, whatever. Okay, 40-year-old woman, anything you can think about this particular character that you have in your book. Okay, Chicago, all right, the fire, great fire in Chicago, the Chicago Cubs, Phil Donahue from way back. Anything you can think about. So anyway, so what you have to do is you have to make connections between two of the things that we've talked about already. And comedians, comedy writers can usually come up with something funny between those two words, and then you have your joke. Okay, I'll give you an
Hmm.
example that is a real example.
Hmm.
So I had to write a joke. Because I write a lot of topical humor for monologues for shows.
Hmm.
So McDonald's, a while back, they went into India and they did a vegetable burger, a vegan burger, right?
Right.
So what I came up with is, I said, okay, McDonald's, cows, India, vegetarians, and I thought of the McDonald's slogan. Remember, you deserve a break today.
Hmm.
Okay, that was a McDonald's slogan in a commercial. So I wrote that down. And in another column, I wrote, vegetarians, vegan burger, and I wrote fake burger. Okay. So the connection I made was you deserve a break today, fake burger. The joke became McDonald's is now going to India with a vegetarian burger. You deserve a fake today. That
Yeah.
became the joke. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not a great joke, but it's good for
Yeah.
instructional purposes because it shows you how I took the concepts, keywords about them, and made a connection between the two words, between two
Yeah.
keywords.
Yeah.
So that's just an example of how you might write a joke.
Yeah. So if I understand, you take an author can take a situation that's already in their book, fiction or nonfiction, doesn't matter. They're taking a situation or a story that's already in their book, and then they want to pull it. You actually want to pull it apart into its main segments, right? As you
Yes,
say, train 40-year-old woman Chicago, break
right,
it into your segments, and then start playing with each segment independently and
right.
kind of looking for what's involved in each, and then putting it back together in a way that um, you wouldn't have thought of putting it together in the first place, like kind of piecing it together in an I don't want to say odd way, but like finding the what's the word, the unusual connection.
It's a new connection, a unique new
Hmm.
connection,
Okay,
you know,
got it.
and people perceive unique new connections as funny very often. Okay.
Yes, absolutely. Awesome.
And comedians, we don't have guys like me don't have to do this really. We do it, but we do it unconsciously. We
Yes.
make the connections in our head without even have to. We don't have to make the lists because we see the connections somehow.
Yeah.
Because we've
Yeah.
done some. People in my position have written thousands and thousands of jokes over the years. So it's something you do naturally after a while. You don't
Yes.
need to make. You don't need to take a piece of
Yeah.
paper and make a list.
Absolutely. It's but if you're new and you're an author and you're like, I need to infuse humor in my book and I don't know how to do it, it's a really nice way to just start. Like it's a as you said, it's a framework or a blueprint on how to start infusing humor into your books,
Right.
which
It's
I
exactly what I would do. It's
yeah,
exactly.
which I think is
That's
really
amazing.
important. No matter what you're writing, you want encouraging language, humorous language, insightful language, and as you say, humor can be used to bring something new to somebody, right? As you said earlier, comedians are actually looking to shift our thinking. And
Yes.
so you can do that in a book as well, using humor to help shift somebody's thinking.
Right. And comedians are basically philosophers and that's what they do. They want to, talk about shifting people's thought about a certain topic, or influencing a certain idea about a certain topic.
And that's what nonfiction authors do, to be honest, right? Nonfiction authors, they're looking to present a new idea or to shift or transform their reader in some way, either by having them look at the world differently or some kind of internal change. So this makes perfect sense. I
Right.
wanted to
And
talk,
that's basically what all creativity is if you think about it. You look at a
right?
paint like I'm looking at a painting right now. So, the paintings, it makes me think of the three horses. I'm thinking it's three horses. So, but I'm seeing horses in a different way because it's like an impressionistic kind of painting. And I mean, that's what creativity is. Not seeing the black and white of something, but seeing something beyond that.
Yes.
So, I
And
mean,
allowing,
in any art form, that's what you're trying to really do. You're trying to show something new, basically.
exactly. And that means allowing yourself to play,
That's right.
right? To play and
Yeah.
find different connections and find a way to look at it that other people aren't looking at it, and then expressing that to others. So,
And that's why writers' rooms are very important. Like I
yeah.
run a writers' room for an organization called Comedy Cures. It's a big charity organization. And I set up this writers' room of stellar talent from across the United States. And we do it in a half an hour. We start with a topic and we bounce the jokes around. And it's amazing what you can get out of just bouncing your jokes around with some other people. So I don't know if authors work like that at all, but I don't
Yes.
consider myself a real author, to say the truth. I'm just a joke
Yes.
writer. But
Yeah. Uh, but fair. I mean, you're
it
still
could
a
be true.
writer.
I'm sorry.
You're still a writer.
I'm still a writer. Yes, I shouldn't
Still a
pay
writer.
myself short. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. So I actually love to talk about Comedy Cures a little bit, if you don't mind.
sure.
Tell us a little bit about it. So who's telling the jokes and who is receiving the jokes? So do patients go through comedy training and learn to tell jokes, or are they just are just they're the recipients of the jokes? Like,
Mostly caregivers and patients are the recipients of the jokes. I'll just give you a little history.
yeah.
Comedy Cures was founded by a comedian named Saran Rothberg,
Mhm.
Saranne Rothberg. She's a stage 4 cancer survivor, and she's gladly been. I'm happy that she's been cancer free for like 30 years now. So she wanted to start something to help can illness patients of all kinds, particularly cancer patients at the beginning, and their caregivers who are under a lot of stress. And she got together very top talent I think her first comedian who did an event for her was Jackie Mason, who was also a very good friend of mine.
Hmm.
Anyway, so what she did was she formed this fantastic organization. They've done hundreds of events on 4 or 5 continents for over 20 years. They do research studies about the relationship between humor and comedy and laughing and illness and health. They're always doing research studies, uh, and they get support from the biggest names in the business: Jerry Seinfeld, Keith Robinson, Wanda Sykes, on and on and on. Dave Attell. Uh, everybody in the community tries to support Comedy Cures, and um, we have various comedians at all levels doing events. So we do them in hospitals, all kinds of places. COVID, put a kibosh on a lot of that stuff for the time being, but we're getting back into doing events. We do, we give gifts out to patients, things like that. But it's a great organization that utilizes comedy to make patients and caregivers happy
And
and
you're
healthy. Because when you're happy, you're healthy.
exactly, and you're the comedian in residence. What does that mean?
Oh well, so I'm like the main comedy writer. So we have people who contribute things to Comedy Cures, comedians they'll make a video or an audio or they'll do an event, but I'm like the in-house uh, comedy writer. So for instance, we do thing every day, a weird holiday joke, because every day of the year there's some weird holiday,
Hmm.
and I'll write a joke. Most days of the year, I'll write a joke for that. We'll do a meme, we'll put it up on all the social media, so the patients kind of like those things. And so I'm like the in-house guy for Comedy Cures. Yeah.
Yeah,
And also I'm a psychiatrist, so they're going to be utilizing me for medical things as well. We haven't
yeah,
done that yet, but so I'm going to be on both ends of it, the comedy end and the therapeutic end.
yeah. And if you want to know more about that, it's comedycures.org. I think that's an amazing organization. And I have a question just based on what you just said. I'm just going to step back just a little bit, Neil. You said, you write a joke every day. If I wanted to be funnier, that kind of makes sense. What if I just practice? So do you get better? Do you get funnier if you practice? So if I said, I'm just going to write a joke every day about whatever special day it is, just for myself, I'm not going to share it, or I'm going to write a joke about a different person I know or a different famous person every day. Is that something that just kind of, if you practice your funny, do you get funnier?
Yes, you do.
Yeah.
And,
Okay.
and being regimented helps. So what I suggest to people is pick up the newspaper every day,
Mm.
or today pick up your, whatever way you get news. Look at how you get news. Look at the top stories. In other words, become a monologue. Make believe you're a monologue writer for Jimmy Kimmel or the Tonight Show or one of those
Right.
shows. And just to give you some information, there are basically 5 monologue categories: politics, entertainment, sports, science and technology, and then we have one-offs, which are weird stories. You only get one joke out of that. Okay.
Yeah.
So writing topical jokes is a good way to start. Look at the news. Um, and again, use that keyword technique. Look at take apart the story, like you said, different components, make a list for each component of interesting words or associations, and then try to make some kind of connection. It's like a puzzle going from here to there. Once you go from here to there, you have your joke.
Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you. So you're working on the Haha History book 1, book 2 is going to come out. Is there anything else you're working on you want to share?
Um, let's see. Well, I do live shows. I teach comedy. I
Tell
teach.
us.
I help comedians with their sets. I increase the number of minutes they have in their sets because it's all about minutes. When you're a stand-up comedian, you have to have a certain number of minutes to be, let's say, a headliner.
Right.
To be the
Right.
last comedian on the show, you have to have 45 good minutes.
Yeah.
Most comedians starting out have very few minutes. So I help people either create bits or I improve and increase their bits that they already have.
Got it.
And as I said, I make jokes more concise for people, cut them to the bone, because the audiences don't have a lot of time to hang around to listen to a long joke. And I'll give you one tip that I give everybody: put the punchline at the end. And I tell this to comedians of all levels. Famous comedians make the mistake. Everybody makes this mistake. I do it as well sometimes. The punchline belongs at the end because if you keep, you see, this actually, I call it the punch word in my classes. There's only one or two words that are funny. That's what the joke is, to get to that important punch word. If
Mhm.
you talk beyond the punch word, then the brains in the audience will focus on what you said after the punch word, which is not the funniest stuff.
Yeah.
So you have to get the audience to focus on the last thing you say. That's what they're going to relate to, to being funny. That's what they expect to be funny. So
Yeah.
burying the punchline is a very big mistake that a lot of comedians make.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I do story coaching. I'm not funny, but I do story coaching. And that's one of the big mistakes storytellers make.
Hmm,
They don't have a definite ending. I say, when you go, because you don't always memorize all your stories, your story. Know your beginning, know your hook at the beginning, and know the ending. And you never stray from the ending, because what happens is they'll say something and they'll end it, and then they'll keep talking, and the audience is, not sure when it's over anymore. And
exactly. It's
and
the
and
exact
it's
same
really
thing.
awkward. Right?
Exactly. So it's the exact same thing.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah.
brilliant. Thank you. So people can reach you at your website, neilberlinercomedy.com. Is there anywhere else people can get in touch with you if they want to look at your courses? Is that the best way?
That's the best way, I think. Also on Facebook. Friend me on Facebook.
Friend you on Facebook. Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah.
Neil,
If you're in this old age group, you still use Facebook,
yes. Yeah, so Jason does TikTok, you do Facebook.
He's the face of haha history. He's the young guy. He's doing
Yeah,
TikTok.
yeah, exactly. Perfect. Neil, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank
Really
you, Melly. It's
appreciated
been
it.
a great time.
It's been great chatting with you as well. All right. Thank you so much for joining us today. Um, thank you so much for joining us today. Next week, we're going to be talking to Evan Gao. He is the founder of Story Origin. He's going to be talking all about book promotion, something I know that everyone here is keenly interested in. And so join us then.